Happy to see everyone. This is Food for Thought, our weekly workshop at noon on Zoom. I'm here with Peyton Williams of Bow Bend Consulting. I'm Becky McKnight, and I think we have a good session coming up. Peyton's going to be addressing friend drama.
Ooh, and Becky, we're going to need your help on this one because, what it's funny when you're a teacher. I don't know if it was a lot easier for me to give parents advice about friend drama versus when it's my own children and we're dealing with all that. So, I'll be really interested to hear, your experiences and all that kind of stuff. So,
Well, thank you. Before we get into it, I just want to say that next week we have an exciting guest coming to Tanya Jordan, who is the CMO of Bark. Bark, if you remember, is an app that many families use that follows, that you install in your children's devices, older children, obviously, than elementary. But then the algorithms detect things that are of concern to the parents and send the parents an email. Titania's a good friend of Westminster and has come over the years to speak to both parents and students, and she has a new book coming out. So please pass the word. I told her that we'd try to get a crowd. Her book is in pre-order now, but we'll send you more news. Peyton's planning on a mailer.
I'm super excited about this, y'all. This is just really neat to be able to hear from somebody who is so deep in this work and has such good experience from the tech side and from the kind of side of working with parents, specifically around, best practices. And so I'm really excited. But one thing that kind of sometimes comes with technology is that friend drama because they're on text threads and they're, oh, who was at a video chat and didn't get invited or whatever. And so, this is something that we all have to start facing as parents. And I think one just hopeful, helpful, huge takeaway is like, it's super normal. You are not alone that your child is going to have some friend drama. You might remember your own friend drama. Usually, I think developmentally, right, as kids age, they start to be able to look outside of themselves a little bit. I was talking to Stephanie Frame, a fourth grade teacher, who was saying like fourth grade is the time where they start to notice what's cool and what other people are doing. And it actually starts a little bit earlier in second and third grade, but really kind of fourth grade, it kind of hits. So I think we're going to, don't be surprised if all of a sudden your children are starting to kind of look around and go, well, what's everybody else doing? And why can't I do that? And I feel left out. So, a couple other key takeaways we're going to talk about today is that, it's really more effective to teach our kids how to handle it than to rescue them. We'll talk about that temptation and, how to battle that as a parent. We'll talk a little bit about what's the difference between bullying and just normal meanness and how to kind of know about that as a parent. And then figuring out, okay, when do I really step in? There might be a time to step in. And when is that time? And then there's always the worry, at least on my end. It's like, well, what if my kid is the mean one? I kind of know, I feel like I know what to do if my kid is someone is being mean to my kid, but I don't know if I know what to do if my kid is the mean one. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, any thoughts to
Right.
get started, Becky?
Yeah, I think your first bullet point is really important, that friendship drama is going to happen. Your child will not be exempt from that. And some children talk about it more, and some children keep it to themselves. But so this is an issue that's important to everyone.
Yeah. I think too, and everybody, I think it might be fun if y'all have notes or questions or specific things you want us to address, just throw them in the chat. I'll tell a story. My daughter, she does not talk to me about her friend drama. She's in third grade, but she will be like, Mom, can I just tell you something? But you don't say anything back. And I'm always like, stop hand tying me before I even like get into like know what the situation is. But I think she's so worried I'm going to try to jump in and fix it already. I'm like, okay, I've got to figure out how to be a listener for her.
They are totally worried that we are going to fly off the handle,
Yeah.
that we might catastrophize something, and
Yeah.
so they will avoid telling us if we blow up.
Yeah.
So that's another time. I'm sure you're going to talk about this where I would have to put my armor on and say, "Oh, tell me more about that," rather than "You're kidding."
Right? I mean, of course, right? It's like everybody practice your calm face in the video right now. Like, okay, wow, that's interesting. Okay, so just so y'all know, there's a couple books and tons of books, millions of books that have been written about this. I have not read all of these, but I did a quick chat GPT search around friend drama. I think some of them sound really interesting. I've got them here. You can always go back on the recording and look at them. But the ones that I have read are more for middle school, since I used to be a middle school teacher. Masterminds and Wingmen, and then Queen Bees and Wannabes, always just like a really interesting look into kind of how middle school goes. Becky, I don't know if you've read any of these other ones from the list. Have you peeked at any of these?
No, believe it or not, the same two, number 7 and 8 that you read, um, I've read, and they're old,
Yeah.
but they're true. I think that Rosalind Wiseman tends to categorize things maybe a little bit too much, but it helps you think about how is my child reacting? Which group does my child belong in as far as responding? At one point, Westminster gave every teacher number 7, and they handed out 300 copies of that. So it's an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just anything you can do to kind of help
Hmm.
yourself. So this is now part of my reading list, I think, as we're going through. But so more on that. But so let's start. When your child comes home and they're being mean, or in the case of me, my child sometimes just wants to gossip about other kids. Like, did you hear about this mean thing that somebody else is doing? And I'm like, you're being mean. But so the kind of key takeaways of listen first, don't overreact. Becky, I mean, any particular thoughts around tips for parents on how not to overreact when your child tells you something like, so and so excluded me on the playground today, or so and so called me fat, or so and so said I was stupid, or so and so pushed me down, or so and so pushed somebody else down? Like, any ways that we can kind of not overreact in that moment?
Yes, I really think, as in almost every instance that we talk about, Peyton, remember that you are the adult.
Mm,
Always remember that everybody's child is a work in progress, just like your own. I would tend to be right here, the mama bear, right? The one growling and standing up. And no, we really have to step back. We have to empower our own children to think through these things. We only ever get one side of the story.
it's true.
But my mantra is never demonize your children's peers.
Yeah.
They're not demons. They are little children who are image bearers of a holy God, and they are works in progress, just like your child and yourself. I mean, we all are. And so I think just keeping that empathy meter so high is really helpful.
I think too, helping your kid see you as that trusted source. We talked about, like, don't be the overreactor. I put this gif of like the mama bear snuggly versus the mama bear like roar, because right, we do have that tendency roar when really we need to be like, hey, tell me more about that. What happened? How did that make you feel? What do you think that person might have been thinking or feeling? And helping them, start with, when you start with curiosity, it helps your child get curious as opposed to judgmental, which, judgment always blows up the drama, whereas
Yes.
curiosity is a way to look for understanding. So I think that posture really helps me, of like, tell me more. What happened? How does that make you feel? What do you think was going on?
Yes. How do you think they felt?
Yeah.
Why do you think she said that?
Mhm.
So that your child really has an opinion on why that person did that.
Yes, they do.
Your child has lots of opinions on that and lots more information. And so trying to come up with the questions that draw your child out and not rushing in. I love the second to last bullet point, role play.
Mm,
So let's pretend your friend does this again at recess tomorrow.
mm,
I'll be your friend. You be you. Let's think about what words you're going to use and what you're going to do or
mm,
say. And so they're a little bit more prepared. I always taught children, stop. That's not okay.
mm,
The expression that's not okay is an expression that I could use today. And I could use it in so many different scenarios. I was one of those people, and I still am. When somebody says something outrageous, I'm mute, and I can't think of anything to say. I can't believe that happened, and it takes me an hour, and then I think, did they really say that? So if you teach your child that expression, that's not okay.
yeah.
They'll be able to use it the rest of their schooling years.
Mm. I think that's huge. I think another thing too, and maybe this is just me and my own failures, but I sometimes, I'm a big believer that where there's conflict, there's two pieces of the pie, or as we say in our house, it takes two to tango. And I can't help sometimes my kids come and they're like, well, so and so is being mean to me. And I'm like, well, what'd you do? And so there's a piece of that, and for sure. But I think I get in my own way as a parent when I do that, because it's really also they need to feel validated. Like, man, so and so did this to me, and they're coming to you because they want you to say, man, I bet that hurt your feelings, or I bet that felt hard. Do you want to talk about it? Right. And when you can kind of get them to kind of get that little amygdala calm down a little bit, then they'll be able to think through their piece of the pie. But first, validate, do that snuggle, do that kind of, all right, that hurt, feel the feelings. And now let's think it through. What do you think they were thinking? What do you want to do next time? Um, and then also, I think too, there's a tendency for us parents, like we can see these things so clearly. It's like, oh, well, I get why they pushed you. I probably would have pushed you too. And, or man, well, you don't really understand the context of what was going on. Like, yeah, of course they said that, but there was more to it. But if we rush in and try to fix it and tell them, like, oh, yeah, well, all you have to do is think this or understand this, then we suddenly stop being the safe place to process, which, they can solve these third and fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh grade problems. They don't need us to fix them. They need us to be a space where they can process.
And
Um,
they don't want you to email their teacher,
no,
and they don't want you to call the other parents.
no.
They really, and I think through this, and you're probably going to talk about this. I think it empowers a child
Mm,
to have them take care of their own incidences, that you're not solving the problem for them. They don't need you. They appreciated your guidance at home, but they went on the playground, PE, wherever, and they took care of it themselves. Because we don't, whatever it is, we don't want our children to have the victim mentality, that they're always the victim and they're always on the losing end. I think that by what Peyton said earlier, by having them think, what was the other person thinking? Well, maybe they were having a bad day. Maybe something happened and your child knows, oh, their dog died or whatever, right? That empowers your child to say, oh, well, I understand that. I can help them or I can resolve this conflict. I think it helps avoid turning your child into a victim.
Yeah, that's huge, Becky. So you talked about don't call the teacher, don't call the parents. So here's kind of that, like, here's some kind of advice around that. So before you call anybody, adult, husband, spouse, wife, mom, dad, whatever, gather the facts. Make sure you know what happened from the child's perspective. And usually on this end, big, I would say that I would only do even this if it felt something like really big, like if it was starting to get where it's like maybe she's coming home or he's coming home talking about like, man, I'm always getting picked on by this person. And here's another thing that happened today. Um, Otherwise, I'm just like, you can figure it out. Like, yeah, sometimes people are mean or sometimes people are hard, right? And you just don't like, you just chemistry, don't get along, figure it out. You got to love them. But on this, it's kind of like, this is maybe the part where your little parent thing's going off, going like, I wonder if I just need another perspective on this. Always, always, if let's pretend one of my children punched another child because they were feeling frustrated or whatever. And I'm like, oh wow, okay, well, this happened. I need to know. Well, I would go with the teacher and just be like, I heard this happened. Do you know anything about this? And again, that idea of being in a posture of curiosity is your best defense against doing something stupid or harmful as a parent.
Yes. Um, obviously there will be times, and this is the slide for it, that you do have to reach out to the teacher to get more information. But I like your idea of curiosity because we only ever know one side, and the teacher will have a lot more information. And this, of course, only happens after, weeks of the same name coming up. On the other hand, my favorite approach, at least when the children were in elementary school, not in middle school, but I love the book Enemy Pie. It's one of my favorite books. And so when a child comes home at the beginning complaining, especially, I don't know, girls or boys, this girl's not being nice to me. Why don't we have her over? Let's invite her to the house. Then you get to see them interacting and you can flip the script for them and turn them into friends, because a lot of times it's because they don't feel liked that they're mean. I know that's weird. Like, I feel like Peyton doesn't like me, so I'm going to go around at recess and say something mean to her,
Mhm.
and it makes it worse rather than better. And the play date that you plan, or just go for ice cream, just make it short, a 1 hour trip to, I don't know what you guys get these days, smoothies. Um, do the Enemy Pie. It's a great book and it really does work.
Becky, I think that's huge because, it's really hard to hate people up close. And I think, that is something. I think also, you have the drama where it's like either your kid is the mean one or your kid is somebody is being mean to them, or you have the drama, which, a lot of children love to just float around and be like, so and so is being mean to so and so. And, these two people are fighting on the playground. And I think as parents too, that's a posture of curiosity, but then also maybe a posture of like, hey, here's what gossip is. Here's why you don't want to get involved in this way. And so some of it is teaching as parents, like, what role do you want to play as a child? What helping your child see their role in the drama clearly and not being one that fans the flames of said drama.
Yes, you don't want your child to be a pot stirrer,
No.
right? So you can, in fact, if you find out, it really doesn't have to do with your child's reporting all this,
Mhm.
and say, well, what did you do? And hopefully they went and played elsewhere.
Yeah.
Right? They went and played with someone else and they didn't get engaged with someone else's drama.
And then on that too, as a parent, you don't be a pot stirrer either. Like, don't be like, well, what else did they do? And what other problems are they having? Right. Then it's like, well, what did you want to do? Are you proud of how you responded? If you weren't, how would you do it differently next time? If you were, great, proud of you. Do we need to keep talking? Let's move on. Right. Like, I think there's kind of a piece to that too, where we as parents, through our curiosity and our natural wish to, protect our kids, sometimes we end up kind of like, ooh, well, it's nice to talk about other people. Let's do that.
Right. I mean, you really want to nip it in the bud in elementary school where friend drama is interesting to talk about, because the more you get rid of it and calm it down, shut it down, the less it's going to affect your child in middle school. Because believe me, middle school is way worse. No
Mhm.
offense, Peyton.
Oh, it is. Well, it is. And I think that's because, our kids are so worried about belonging. And if they feel like they belong, this doesn't. happen as much. And so that's, as parents, what we need to also look for. So I do think there is definitely that moment of like, okay, as a parent, there are times when you do need to step in. If there's some repeated or unresolved stuff that your child just cannot seem to figure out with your coaching, if there's physical harm or physical threats, or if your child feels unsafe, if it's affecting their well-being at school, like if they're like, I don't want to go to school, I feel it's not, I don't feel good there, right? If the school isn't addressing it, which should not be a problem for our community, but at some places it is. And so, but those are sometimes. I will say again, just this like small time, one time disagreement, or even like two-time disagreement. And then, or most of the time, our children just need to vent. They need a space to be like, can you believe what this person did? And you to be like, yes, I bet that really stunk. And then they can move on with their day. Becky, anything about the like when to step in or advice for parents? Oh, I think she got frozen. Maybe her
Hey,
internet.
is
There
the
you
internet?
are. You're unfrozen now. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the internet's tough. I just put in the chat, Bhumi had asked a question about Young Peacemakers.
Hmm.
Young Peacemakers International is a good site, and it has some materials, but in Romans it says basically live at peace, try to live at peace with everyone as long as it depends on you. As right as far as it depends on you, because sometimes you can't live at peace with everyone, but we want our children to know that they have done their best.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's a good thing to go by. I do like the Peacemakers. I used to teach it. It's a Christian curriculum, and teaching your children some good words for peacemaking. Thanks, Boomy.
So let's talk a little bit about bullying, because in our drive to become more aware of bullying and make sure it doesn't happen on campuses across the nation, a lot of times things that were just childhood meanness and childhood, conflict started to get labeled as bullying. And so I think it's really important, again, just so your child doesn't feel like a victim, but that they know, okay, well, I can stand up to people who are being mean, and I can say, stop that. I don't like that. And that they're empowered. Sometimes when we bring up the bullying word, it's like, oh man, well, you can't handle it. And I think, we need to certainly be honest about it, but we also need to be thoughtful. So, again, this idea of bullying is that it really is about a power imbalance that's repeated. And it can be verbal or social or physical harm, right?
Mhm.
But it's one of those things where it's like it probably is going to require adult intervention to stop. And the repeated part is the key, I think, on bullying.
Yes, bullying is repeated and targeted.
Mhm.
That your child has been targeted over and over and over by the same person or group of people. With boys, it's usually physical, and with girls, it's words
Mhm.
and ostracizing or clickiness. Um,
Yeah.
Meanness happens every day. And the kids lash out and they say things that are mean. Sometimes they're perceived as mean and they were not never intended to be mean. And sometimes they're full on intentionally mean, but it's not bullying. It might last 3 days and then they're mean to someone else. And then your child's mean to someone else, right?
We're equal opportunity mean people.
Yeah.
So I think that's just helpful to know. So, okay, Becky, what do I do if my kid is the mean one? If the teacher calls me up and says, "Hey, I've noticed that little Peyton Dobbs over there is just having a tough time getting along with other people, and she's doing some things in the classroom." First, real quick, can you tell me what kind of things might I get a call home about? Like what, how will I know if my kid is the mean one?
Well, the teachers are actually really vigilant about meanness. Any epithets, any rude words that your child is called, or you will get you will get a call if your child is saying mean epithets, right? You blah blah blah, and especially if they're racial slurs, the teachers are extremely vigilant about that, and the parent will be called immediately.
Mm,
And those things are really important. I love what you wrote there. It's address the root cause.
mm.
Some children are curious about words and they just try them out.
Yeah.
And it's not because your child's evil down deep or worse than anyone else. They just like words and they feel a little taboo and they just want to throw them out into the world. I love the book Albert's Bad Word. It is a classic, fabulous book. I sat down with a fourth grader, fourth grade, who was saying bad words and read that book. And she was so intrigued. It's also on YouTube if you don't have the book.
Okay.
Albert's Bad Word. And that's if your child is saying swear words and gets caught at school. It's not really bullying or meanness, but at that you are always going to get called if your child swears or uses a racial slur.
Yeah.
Meanness, you'll get child if your child does physical aggression, you will get called and your child will get a yellow card. Pushing, hitting, kicking, spitting, all of those things, you will get called. And then what if your child's a victim of that? If your child's the one who pushed, hit, kicked, did a racial slur, or said something horrible about somebody else, you need to talk about restitution. You need to talk to your child. How are you going to make this right?
Mhm. Yeah. That's
And
huge.
then if your child's the victim, you have to talk to them about, can we forgive?
Mm.
Let's talk about what forgiving does. Because eventually a child who doesn't forgive, they get a bitter root. And so we want forgiveness in all cases,
Yeah.
but we don't force forgiveness.
I think, Becky, I want to go back to the idea of the root cause real quick before we wrap up, because I think, a lot of times, again, when our kids feel like they don't belong or they feel insecure or they feel a little bit of peer pressure, or maybe they just have a hard time with impulse control or they have a hard time with their emotional regulation and they just have a short fuse, or, maybe there's some stuff going on at home that, at school, it's just coming out. Those are some things that as parents, we can work on. We can talk about setting those clear expectations for what it looks like to be a kind friend or how to respond when you feel frustrated with a buddy at school. Um, and to help them with, okay, when you feel like you want to say, do, or whatever, what are you going to do next? And again, we get back to that kind of role play with the kids. So if your kid is the mean kid, you can role play a better way
Mhm.
with them and encourage them, because getting pegged as like the mean kid is really hard. It just kind of makes everything worse, right? But just to help your kid know that they are not a mean kid, they just had a bad moment or they had a bad season,
Yeah,
and or they made a bad choice, but they can do better and differently, and that you believe in them to do that. I think that's huge.
that's really important that they are not a mean person. They did something mean,
Yeah.
but they're not a mean person. It doesn't define them. I actually think the number one thing we need to do is watch our own speech. And if you are talking with your spouse or you're on the phone with your sister or whoever, and you're saying cruel things about someone else, guess what?
Oh, you got frozen. But you're right. Guess what? It's That's what they're
You
gonna.
don't want, right? They're going to be like us.
Yeah, they totally are. There's a really funny exercise. Everybody, real quick, you might do this or not. Everybody make a fist like this or a hand like this. Do exactly as I say. Put your hand on your cheek. All right. So if you put your hand on your chin, you did what I was doing, not what I said. So our kids, and if I just did that the other night with the audience of about 70 people, and about 60 of them did just like this. So y'all, I swear it is modeling that we have for our kids. So, and even if we mess up, right? Like, oh, I was just gossiping on the phone. I know you overheard me do that. I shouldn't have said that. And model to your kids that self awareness. That's huge for them too. Well,
That's
Becky,
great.
let's talk a little bit about what's coming up because I'm super excited. For all of you who just joined, go ahead and share, Becky. What have we got coming up?
We are so excited that Titania Jordan has agreed to come speak to us next Thursday. Please invite your friends. She's fabulous. She, maybe about 3 years ago, came and spoke to our fifth graders. There was a line of children wanting to talk to her at the end of her hour session. There were probably 12 children in line, wanted to speak to her individually. She always came to Westminster to talk to the fifth graders. Now she's a big executive. She's been with Bark for a very long time, is very influential and extremely in the know. Peyton and I were not as in the know as we could have because I told Peyton it was parenting in the tech world. That's her book from 2020.
Oh, nice.
She has written another book that's just coming out called Parental Control, a guide to raising balanced kids in the digital age.
There we
So
go.
I'm really excited. She has her finger on the pulse of what's happening out in technology and children. So don't miss next week. Her name is Titania.
And spread the word, you guys. We're so pumped. And then actually in a couple weeks, we're interviewing somebody about AI as well. So I think we've got some great tech stuff coming up, along with some other good topics. But thanks for being here this week. And if you know anybody who wanted to see it and they missed it, feel free to share the YouTube or the email that I sent today with the Zoom link because that has the YouTube link so they can see this on YouTube.